to my channel. Thank you so much for visiting, and I'm so excited to bring you this topic today. It's one that I've become more and more interested in, so I thought I would share it with all of you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about energetic cords and when to know when you need to cut an energetic cord from somebody. So to start this conversation, we really need to define what an energetic cord is. And an energetic cord is really any time we connect with someone on the sphere of our energy. So anytime really we have a close relationship with somebody and we have a back and forth with somebody, there is an exchange of some kind of energy. And that could be, you know, a loved one, it could be a family member, a teacher, someone in your profession, even, you know, an animal, anything like that. You can have this kind of connection. Now, having an energetic connection is part of being social. We need to build these kinds of connections so we remember people, so that we understand and we can feel empathy toward others and things like that. And so that, you know, we miss someone when they're gone and things like that. So it's not a bad thing to have an energetic connection whatsoever. The positive piece is, if it's, I guess what it comes into is there can be two different types of energy connection. To say it simply, you can have a positive connection or a negative connection. The positive connection is a two-way street, so you're giving as much energy as you're receiving. It's an equal exchange of energy. A negative connection is when one, for the sake of this, for simplicity, one person is drawing more energy than the other person is receiving. I think that's the best way of saying it. So it becomes, I'm sure you've heard of this like energy or psychic vampirism, which is when one person's kind of sucking the energy from somebody else. And so they don't have the energy to sustain themselves, to help out in whatever way they need to do in their life or to feel happiness or fulfillment. And the other person is able to feel that kind of fulfillment and fulfill goals and things like that by drawing off the energy of somebody else. This doesn't have to be intentional by any stretch of the measure. I know when you say psychic vampire, it sounds intentional because a vampire, as we see it, intentionally seeks out prey and sucks them of blood in our folklore. So an energy vampire, or someone who takes energy from somebody else, could honestly just do it as kind of part of how they sustain themselves, and it could be because they have not found a good way to sustain energy themselves, and so they have to pull from others. And they may have learned this along the way, from childhood along up, that they are able to sustain themselves from others. It doesn't mean they are intentionally doing it. Another type of person will intentionally be sapping into somebody's energy, either drawing off their energy through a psychic experience or an energy healing or cleansing or something like that, or may purposely kind of put a barb or put a hook into somebody, and we'll talk about hooks as well. A hook into somebody that allows them to pull that energy from them, and they may very well know that they're doing it. So there are those two different types, and so and again, there's probably a number of different types, but those are the most simple types that I can mention today. So we'll talk about a couple of different ways energy connects. One way is through cords. So we have energy cords, and energy cords usually connect chakras, from my understanding. So, you know, one usually, if it's in a positive relationship, it's heart chakra to heart chakra. So those are the two that are connected, blood pumping, energy pumping the right way, everything's happy, fulfilling for both. If it becomes a negative association or negative energy connection, one is connected to the heart and the other one is heart chakra and the other one's connected to the solar plexus chakra. So that's where the connection is. It's really kind of getting you at the gut level at that point, and giving at the heart level. So it's interesting how it attaches to different a totally different section of the body, even when it's negative. So if you're doing a chakra reading on somebody, you probably could pretty much tell where it is, what the connection is. May even be able to tell who the connection is with. I don't know enough about all that to be able to advise you, but it's a kind of very interesting thing. So there are cords. There's also hooks, and when we talked about cords and I mentioned the chakras, a lot of times cords can just be energy connections between two people. It doesn't necessarily have to attach deeply in the chakras. The hook will be very specifically placed and very just like a hook, just like a fish hook, placed into the chakra and really be like gouged in there. So just kind of let you know, when you do any kind of cleaning ritual or cleansing ritual, cord cutting, hooks are a little bit more difficult to clean out than the cord is. So you have a couple of those energy associations going on there. So I guess it's a good question, because this is probably one that popped to mind, is how do I know I have a negative connection with someone? Well, let's talk about a positive connection with someone. Think about somebody that every time you talk to, you feel really filled up and they feel really filled up, and you feel like you can work together and it's fulfilling for both of you. This is probably really quite limited, or you may have a ton. I hope you have a ton. But try to think of someone that you have this association with. This is your positive energy and emotional connection. Now, it doesn't mean because you have a negative association with someone, however, that you are linked to them, that you have a cord that is a negative cord. I want you to think about any time that you've been with someone and you felt completely depleted, drawn, and had to restore yourself over the course of several days. That could be somebody who is drawing off of your energy. Absolutely. Perhaps unintentionally. Now, those are a couple of examples, I think, that are I think we've all been around someone, a lot of times gossipers are this way, or people who like drama are pulling from people's energy by getting them interested in what they have to say and stuff like that, and fulfilling themselves through that. And so you'll have one person getting escalated and excited and almost manic in some cases. You'll just feel drained after talking to that person. And then, there's also, you just might feel like, well, I've been drained, but how do I know when this is a serious situation? How do I know when it warrants a cord cutting? Because just because you talked to your coworker about something, you felt a little drained afterwards, but by the next day you felt fine and went about your business, and most of the time you have good communications with this person, then I wouldn't worry about it too much. The problem becomes, and it becomes more serious, when you're really physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and like soulfully drained over a period of time, and then you can feel this happening to you. So a couple of points I want to touch on this, so that you know that someone's pulling your energy, because sometimes you don't know who it is. Sometimes you know who it is. You have a pretty good feeling. You just talk to someone, you leave and you feel drained. It's pretty clear association. But sometimes you have this feeling that like something's not quite right, and you don't know where it's coming from. So here are some signs that your energy is being sucked from somebody else, or you have a negative associated energy cord. You may feel sick to your stomach, headaches, nausea. If you have challenges with mental health, you may find that if you have anxiety, you may feel that the anxiety gets worse. If you have depression, you may notice that your depression gets worse. If you have even like a more specific disorder, you may find that the symptoms of that disorder become more apparent, even if you're on medication for that. So that can be one. Another thing that can happen is that it's almost like having the flu-like symptoms. You may be sleeping 8-9 hours a day or whatever you need, or maybe it's 6 hours, whatever you need for your body. You may be drinking water fine, you may be abstaining from alcohol that could draw you down, you may be eating well and everything like that, and feel like you can barely get through the day. And the draining feeling comes out physically as well. You may notice that you're paler, that there are darker circles under the eyes, that you just don't feel right. You don't feel like yourself. And that's what it comes down to, is you don't feel like yourself. Maybe you feel more withdrawn, especially if you're energetic and outgoing. Maybe you feel confused, or this is a big one, the head gets muddled. So thinking and the brain seems to be slower, it's not putting things together. Maybe you're forgetting a lot of items when you never used to forget stuff, things like that. So those can be indicators that you're getting drained. You may find even that you're not as interested in things as you used to be before. You're going through the motions in your life. So some of these things could resonate, especially if you struggle with depression or anything, as maybe I'm going through a depressive cycle or something. And it could be, you could well be. But on the other hand, it could be something like, this is happening to you, that you're getting drained by someone else. So once you determine and feel certain that you're being drained, and then sometimes what it just takes is some meditation, like meditate over the course of the next couple of days and see if anything changes, like if you get any insight from that. And a lot of times you can feel at your core when somebody's draining something from you, and it's not sickness, and it's not being too busy, and it's not anything else, medications that you may be taking or anything like that. So once you come to the understanding that this is a negative cord connection, and either you may know who it is or you may not, then it's time to do a cord cutting. Cord cuttings are best done during the new moon, especially, or the full moon. And so that's something also to consider, and any special moons as well that come up are also of interest when doing kind of cord cutting like this. So I won't go over the actual cord cutting in this video. One of my next videos, I think the next video, I will explain how to do a cord cutting. I did want to discuss the ramifications of a cord cutting, because this is really important to know before undergoing the process, because it's really irreversible at that point. Once you cut a cord, energetic cord from somebody, and you finish that ritual process, you need to be able to accept the ramifications of that. So someone might be pulling you dry of energy, but you may actually strangely be addicted to that. You're drawn in. This person could be very enigmatic. They may make their life seem really interesting, so you suddenly seem drawn into all of that, whatever it is. And it can be addictive. It seems weird to say, but addictive to give. If you're a giver, it can also be really addictive to give to others, and then others that are more than happy to take will just pull all of that into themselves. So you may have a withdrawal, honestly, from it. And so understand that that's part of the process, and that's okay. You need to have that withdrawal. That's perfect. It just means that you're recovering and getting to the point where you can now build your energy resources back up. After a cord cutting, you will feel relief, and it's instant. You know it's been done. It's instant, and what's done is done, you know. And another ramification that can come out of this is that if you're not quite sure who you have this negative cord with, and in my video I'll just show you how to do a blanket one, so we'll pull anything negative out of your life, and you may have fallout with those around you. So you might be someone who's very close to you. It probably is. And I would give it about a week, sometimes a couple of weeks, before you what I call the fallout happens. And a week to a couple of weeks, you may suddenly be contacted by this person or whatever it is, and it could feel like it's coming out of left field, and they're angry or they're aggressive or they're trying to engage you in some way, or they come at you and all of a sudden they're super sweet and want to spend tons of time with you and are like super into you, you know, that kind of thing. Usually it's the first rather than the latter. What's happening is, for the person that you cut the cord, they had a certain energy bank from you. And over time, as soon as you cut it, they don't get any more energy from you. So that bank starts to come down. And depending on how much they pulled from you or who else they pull from, their bank starts coming down lower and lower and lower and lower. And then eventually there's no more bank and they need to draw from somebody. And we're talking about, you know, I talked about withdrawal of the connection on your end. Their withdrawal is like very difficult. It's painful for them. And they panic generally. That's why it's usually a negative strike at you. But sometimes when people panic, they get a hold of themselves and they say, okay, how can I make this better for me? And then they might come at it from a different angle. So it depends on their personality. But so don't be surprised if someone comes out, and maybe someone very unexpected, and becomes very aggressive with you. And if that's the case, because you've cut the cord, you really don't have an association with them, and it's way easier to make decisions that you need to make. And those decisions will be strikingly clear, and you can make the decisions you need to make, whatever they might be, based on the relationship, and move on. And so it's an interesting process, and it's a bit disconcerting if you don't see it coming. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to mention it here. And it could be like very minor, a little blip on the scale, and move on with life, or it could be rather catastrophic, or any number of things. And generally these people will come at you a couple times before they give up and realize they need to find another source of energy, because they don't have a lot of energy left. So they can only go at you so much. They may try to engage you in argument and things like that as well, so they can draw off the energy from you during the argument. But if you cut a cord well enough, they won't even be able to get that energy from you. So it will be severed. I've read some things stating that a energy cord could redevelop. I think that's possible. I definitely do. However, I don't think it's necessarily gonna happen. But I think if that person is part of your like regular life or whatever, especially if they're a spouse or something like that, you may have to do multiple cord cuttings or cleansings of yourself on your space every so often, so you can kind of keep things on the even keel, that kind of thing. But it's definitely all very interesting, I have to say. Like, until you go through the process, you may just be listening to me and going, that sounds really hokey and isn't real. But when you go through the process and you actually cut the cord and feel the relief, first of all, you're just like, wow. And then if any of the fallout happens, then it's even more interesting and telling. So you'll know exactly who it is at that point, that has created this association with you. And don't worry about them, because if they can't draw off your energy, more than likely they're going to draw off somebody else, which is unfortunate for everybody and for them. So the person who's drawing off energy generally needs to mature a little in their ability to manage and handle their own energy. I honestly believe that some people aren't able to, that they're like a sieve. They've got so many holes in so many different directions that it kind of bleeds out of their system, and they just can't do it. And they have a hard time generating their own. I honestly believe that. I don't know that these people even realize that's them, you know? And so it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting and yeah, it's an interesting process. It's a study, that's for sure. It's a study, and it's ongoing. So just because you cut a cord with, like, did one cord cutting doesn't mean no one can attach to you at some given point in the future negatively, in which case you would need to once again do a cord cutting. So I'm sure there are people who do them regularly, that, you know, and then I've read articles where people have talked about, you know, doing cord cuttings after going to the store because they feel like people's stuff has landed on them. And I to a point can see that, but then I think maybe that's when you start focusing your energy work on resilience and kind of becoming Teflon, so that can just kind of bounce off of you instead of sinking in. That in itself is a study and work. So yeah, so I hope you enjoy talking about energetic cords and hooks, and enjoyed our discussion about this. If you have any stories or anything you want to discuss, definitely put it in the comments down below, because I love hearing about different stories that people have or questions about this kind of stuff. I'm not an expert in, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in all things energy, but I will try to help you as best I can in the comments, or even just write your experiences. Have you done a cord cutting? What was it like? What happened to you? Did you have any fallout and stuff like that? So I would love to hear all of this. So thank you so much for spending some time with me, and I'm really looking forward to anything that you have to say. Have a really wonderful day and wonderful week, and see you next time. Namaste.